Welcome to Carl DeGregorio's Death Session 45. Um, I am in a different location. I am on the road, and without getting too into the details because they're not really mine to share. I am sorry for the rough angle and the different scenario here. I am out of town in a support role for someone who's passed, and I've been allowed to sit in this great man's chair in his office at his desk, which helps me, stay consistent with my theme of speaking from a desk and keeping the desk session. But it is also, a time of grieving for uh, my girlfriend and her family. And again, I try to keep vague about personal stuff, but uh, it's a sad occasion, and a support role is, um, I'm finding out, is actually a place to consider yourself lucky to be of service, to be the kind of person who can be around in these things and be an asset. So um, I think that's the goal. And the goal of what I want to do with the death session, the goal of what I want to do with my art, with my show, and with what I'm tasked to do, which is to say something brief, under 2 minute comments at a service. And I take, my art that seriously. I write the show. A lot of my show might even have a preachy vibe to it. I am always straddling the line in my show about going too highfalutin or too spiritual minded, when it really should be, to be um, funny and impactful. And the reverse is true of speaking in a session, where it would be inappropriate to go for the laugh, or inappropriate to um, you know as a former comic, and always a comic, I guess. It's always the decision whether or not to be uh, appropriate, or what have you. I have been assured that it will be heavy to a degree, so that the director even said that the levity would be welcome, and is assuring me that's the right way to go to some degree, within taste. And a lot of what I've talked about so far, it's hard to know if I'm even, uh, um, again, whether this would be something that is worth. I think that's the lesson, that um, the hardest part for the grieving people, and I remember this with my father, the last thing you ever want to hear during these times is life goes on, which of course is true, and of course is the mature and spiritually evolved way to look at it. But you don't want to hear that when you can't believe the new reality. So that is what I will say that I wouldn't say to anyone in the immediate loss. The truth of moving forward with the task that should not stand down even in the grief. I am lucky that I can get the time off to be supportive. But for people who have serious business to attend to, or more strict uh, boss situations, or what have you, the that makes these situations even worse. And the fact that life will march on while you're trying to grieve. And I remember having to get back to work. For some, is a pleasant distraction from the grief. For others, it's agony, especially if you're forward facing, if your business is public, if your business is entertainment. I remember I did a set, I want to say 3 weeks after my father. The first set I did after my father passed was, it went well. And it almost felt like disloyal, and I know that that's sort of going on for my girlfriend wants to. It's not a social thing, and people. What I would posit as the difficulty in these situations is personalities that don't kind of get the greater um, virtue of it not being about you. Um, and while reminiscing about happy times is um, probably what I would lean into, and it's a really good instinct, and it makes people feel better to have a laugh and to remember great times. But you gotta see as soon as it starts to rise and people are having too much fun uh, at the direct opposite feeling of woe for the aggrieved, that becomes hairy when you're around more people. Another moment of loss in the past, I remember being so fatigued, emotionally fatigued, that I prayed that that telepathy were a thing, so that I could just sit there like this and say, I can't say another word, dog. You're gonna have to let me be. But I was hoping I could just send it that way. And in the good fortune of having really nice people to talk to, um, and now that I'm writing something that is not um, for entertainment purposes, but for um, a wish to have representation of me through my girlfriend to say something. Um, it's a heavier uh, feeling than I've had about speaking. But I think I'm right about this, that um, the level that you write at should be this critical, um, or why bother, And that doesn't mean it has to be sad. It just means that, like, are you writing to say something that holds water in the grand scheme of things? Um, for example, there's a famous Laurel and Hardy silent movie, I think, where they're moving the piano up the Hollywood Hills, and it's a comedy, and it's a slapstick comedy. It's a wordless comedy, and it's funny just because it's funny. But what is the overarching narrative to me? And maybe I'm overestimating it or overanalyzing it, but it's Sisyphus, right? It goes back to the Greek myth of having to push the rock up the hill, the futility, the impossible task, the lack of communication between Laurel and Hardy as they buffoon around the piano, as it is more and more difficult, as this task becomes a burden, as uh, rise and fall, as success and failure, as what are we even doing? So there is actually existential weight to that comedy. And that's what I mean about whether or not this stuff is being written in a critical, um, meaningful way. And so, um, just had a conversation with someone who was, kind enough to ask me about myself this this week, these days. And I spoke about the death session and the thing that we're writing, or I'm writing. And as I told the story, I've started to make connections between my play and my book, and now this play, and how they're all continuums, and how many of them, and all of them so far, were ways to deal with grief. And and that may be a niche, that may be my niche, right? Um, to use my crafts to help people or help myself process grief. And and then the real litmus test is, if you're elevator pitching to someone who hasn't read it, some people can give a better pitch than they can deliver on the page. And I hope that I am not one of those people. I hope I can deliver on the page and in the performance what I am endeavoring to say, to do. That writing to theme, or writing, siphoning everything into what's the purpose, what do you want to have said, other than jokes and other than narrative and other than character. It's what are you trying to put forth? And obviously, it could be interpreted, and it will be interpreted, or it will be criticized, and it could be leaning toward maudlin, and it could be leaning toward nostalgic and sentimental and all that stuff. But that's for the critics and not for me. And I was very, it's very hard to talk about edifying my process while I'm in this thing. But for people who have the luxury and the gift of life to carry on, then yes, life does go on. And so that's why I am endeavoring to sit here today to stay on schedule, even though it's vain, or even though it's in the grand scheme of things not a big deal. And I have been allowed to sit at a great man's desk and be welcomed enough to have this silly little thing, that's even hard to describe to certain people in a certain generation. What a death session is, what a YouTube channel is, what a starting out is, what 45 of them. So we're approaching a year. We're getting close to a year of trying to do this, and the best I can hope for now is that someday the back catalog will be viewed, and that I will somehow be able to get more eyeballs on this. And it's not necessary, but I'm just saying that I have to believe that no effort from the heart, from the soul, is futile, and head count and followers and attendees is not the measure of a man or the measure of a person's worth. And as I've spoken before about AI and how many times at these ceremonies, I've been helping out a little bit with the program. It can lean into a resume rather than a tale of a person's heart, and maybe that is the way it goes, especially for prominent people. But when AI is described as this thing will be so powerful, it will have all the knowledge of the human mind it'll be at your fingertips, it'll be smarter than us, but it doesn't know what the peanut butter and jelly sandwich your mom used to make tastes like. It doesn't tell the story of a father defending his wife in segregated South. It doesn't tell the story of how good someone's stuffing is. How does that get into the database? It doesn't. And so in times like this, it's when my paranoia and my fear of AI making me obsolete. It's the heart, and it's the having put your feet on wet sand, or put your hand on the shoulder of a weeping daughter, or to all those things. Someone cracking a joke about someone loading up their plate too much at a buffet at a repast. That is not data. That is what we would call anecdotal, and an anecdotal that negates it's not data based. It's not fact based because it's anecdotal. And then what is the thing that means something to somebody? Facts. I get it. There are facts. Here are facts. It sucks we have to die, especially for the people who go before us, and we have to live on without them. That's a fact. Anecdotally, what they made you feel like is impossible to transmute or translate or to put on someone else. So yes, you would go with this person achieved this person achieved that. And in this case, and one day you'll get the full picture, in this case, the heart and the activism and the heart and the business were very aligned. And that's a lesson I want to take, is to be aligned. And so when I say I have a lot of work to do, because the example of this man, and what it is to be supportive. You need means to be supportive. You don't only need means, and your presence is plenty support, but you need means and a way to be supportive, because sometimes all somebody needs is, I need shoes that go with this suit and I don't have it. And those gestures of people supporting that way is not any less than kind words and kind gestures and presence. So it's bringing all that together. And I haven't figured out a way to um, pile up the means, the ends in these pursuits. And I don't know much about business and entrepreneurship, and I hope and I pray that there's a way for these endeavors of art of mine to pay off, so that I can be supporting myself and supportive to others. Uh, and that would be uh, what it means to be uh, well off, in my opinion, well off, so that the convenience of a place to shelter someone, the convenience of multiple bathrooms, all these measures of success aren't cars and aren't jewelry. They are, I think, in the realm of the material, it is shelter and means and freedom and ability to travel and health. Those are the measures of achieving or being fortunate, or to have a meaningful life, and to help those you care about. And so um, it's been it's been difficult to be a witness, and my tears have been uh, watching other people suffer. Uh, and selfishly, yes, I had a relationship in micro to what these people had with the man. So it's all our loss, but it's the roughest part of this temporal life. Um, and I do believe that in the best it can offer, if it's distraction, that's a fair Netflix and now streaming a rerun of a really pulpy show is kindness in a time like this. The detachment and the escapism. So even frivolous art helps. And then there's the kind that moves the needle in terms of social change, or moves the needle in terms of emotional truth. And it's no more important. It's no more important than support staff and caterers and people who help, and people who lift things, and people who work in it's all equal footing, I would say. But the contribution I can make or want to make might be just the mere distraction, or to bring a laugh to a sad moment, or to commune and to have shared information outside of my origin world, knowing some things about a different culture, stuff like that. And so, not any more important, but the death session. Right now, as I speak, I am distracted by how bad this shot may look, how it's not the angle I'm used to. It's not the same backdrop. It'll look different in the collection of 45 of these I've done, and it's not going to sound right. I mean, that microphone there's a notion in beverage service industry that the value of the glass and the high premium garnish is how you can charge more for the same thing you would get at a dive bar, right? So a blue cheese stuffed olive in a cold glass of vodka is a martini. Everywhere else, it's cold vodka in a bucket. And so I don't have the microphone, which all that really does is kind of give you the notion that it's broadcastingable. But we've lost a lot of that, and in the formality of that and the infrastructure of that. And people are doing interviews with the AirPods, and I hope this sounds up to snuff. And um, I hope I haven't taken too much time out of my support role to do something for myself in this time. And I am lifted by generosity, and I'm lifted by, um, if you're any kind of artist, I think even these things that you're, when people ask me, are you losing ground on your project because of this? The answer is no, because it is reminding me that my sensitivity and my talent of framing something with the written word and spoken word, and hopefully making an emotional connection to people and to the way I share, that is now what I will bring back to working on the return of Otis Redding and working on what I'm going to have to say at a ceremony. And I'll share one story about my friend Jordan. I spoke at his wedding, and it was because of that, feeling so good about him and his nuptials, and having the privilege to be able to say something, and what I prepared and the laughs I got. It gave me the confidence to know. I always knew I was funny, and I'd already written a play, but to be able to deliver on a mic zingers and jokes, and to do it in a 2 minute, 3 minute format, and do it in front of what will always be a very soft landing wedding and things like that. Um, it gave me the confidence to know I could attempt stand-up comedy, and then I did that for 20 years. And so I think, how do you separate your true, like, real life and your art? You don't, you know. And that, like I said, it doesn't make me more precious, more sensitive, more anything like that. You can live artfully, but just the way I do it is that there's not much separation from the artist and the art, meaning that what I bring is not transformation like Daniel Day-Lewis, or I don't write sci-fi, or beautiful poetry. I pretty much deliver what I feel, and in my way of speaking and or writing, and that's why there's not that much separation, and why this death session will take place, even on the road, even in the midst of mourning someone's loss, and and I may have to cut it short just because I'm not sure. I'm always constantly wondering if this is appropriate, which may be me worrying too much, always about that. But one of my favorite introductions at a show when I was starting out in stand-up was someone called me the last gentleman in stand-up comedy. And so I'm always aware of that. And it's served me pretty well as far as being able to give and receive kindness. So hopefully this wasn't too maudlin, and hopefully this wasn't too indulgent on the aspect of getting it done when there's other business at hand. I hope it doesn't look too bad. I'm getting a little of my chin music because I can't elevate the lens, and hopefully the sound isn't unbearable. I am speaking in a relatively monotone, but this has been the Death Session 45, and you know, try to stay up out there, and remember to stay consistent if you can. All right, peace.